Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Who Gives a Dram if you're on YouTube. I appreciate you checking out the channel. Make sure while you're here, throw the channel a subscribe, like the videos, comments, hit the bell notification down below, so that way you're always updated when I post my new whiskey reviews. If you're new to the channel, just doing a different whiskey review every week. This is going to be episode 83 of the podcast. The whole podcast is available on every podcast platform. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Breaker, all those podcast platforms, you can hear the full unedited raw cut of Who Gives a Dram every single week. I only record the whiskey reviews for YouTube. So we're going to jump right into it. And for those listening on audio, welcome back. That was about 10 minutes for me. And for you guys, there's just 1 second. So the power of technology. But today we have a very special bourbon that we're doing. Not only is Castle and Key's small batch bourbon a new release, hot off the press, is very popular, but is one of the one of the first distilleries I ever saw in my entire life. It was probably the second distillery that I ever saw. It was Buffalo Trace was the first distillery I ever saw, like in person when I was in Kentucky in February for the first time. And then after that it was Castle and Key. And then I think it was Woodford. And then maybe one other one. I don't remember. But Castle and Key was the second distillery I ever saw just a few months before the first batch of their small batch bourbon was released. I went there. It's a beautiful distillery. I want to say it's in Frankfort, Kentucky. Kind of just off the beaten path. You got to go down like some weird, like very narrow, curvy roads to get there. But when you get to the actual distillery, it is a place. You can tell it was built in the 1800s. Like it's like an elegant castle that Colonel E.H. Taylor had built, which doesn't surprise me because the father of modern bourbon, as some people call him, makes the best barrel proof offering right now. Might be a hot take, might not be. I don't know. But we are not talking about Colonel E.H. Taylor today, although this is technically the Castle and Key Distillery, which was rejuvenated and opened to the public in 2018, I think, had laid dormant for the better part of half a century. Once brown liquors took over in the 70s, people wanted to drink rum or I'm sorry, other way around. I'm stupid. People wanted to drink clear spirits like vodka and gin. Who chooses to drink gin, by the way? So weird. If you choose to drink gin, you psycho. It tastes like botanical cough syrup. It's disgusting. Shout out to Ryan Reynolds, Aviation Gin, obviously, but still disgusting. When clear spirits took over in the 70s to 80s era, a lot of distilleries went out of business. So it's only fitting that a day after National Bourbon Day, today is Wednesday, June 15th, that this is going to be that I'm recording this. Well, technically, I'm recording this Tuesday, June 14th. The whole episode will come out Wednesday, June 15th on audio platforms, but the video will come out Wednesday, June 16th, or Thursday, June 16th. So 2 days after National Bourbon Day, if you're watching this on YouTube, we're doing a distillery of such high significance to the Bourbon Trail, to the history of bourbon, and just, it's got to be a top 5 most beautiful distilleries in the world. And there's almost too much. We didn't go for a tour, and we weren't able to see, all of the different aspects of Castle and Key. I wish we could have. I really would have enjoyed taking a look at all of the equipment. I know they use a lot of the same equipment from the original distillery, and they're still using that today, which is just the coolest thing in the world. The fact that this distillery was just kind of becoming overgrown, and almost nature was getting ready to swallow it up when two guys, I had their names right here, bought it. I forgot their names, Arvin and Murray. They opened the doors in 2018. Yeah. So, if you're in Kentucky and if you're in the area, I would highly suggest checking out Castle and Key. And not only because it's such a historically significant spot in Bourbon and in Kentucky, they've put out a good product. So this bourbon that we're reviewing today is Castle and Key Small Batch Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. You can see the bottle right there. It's 99 proof, 49.5% alcohol by volume. This was released in May, I want to say. This is batch number 2. For those people that know what they're talking about, this is batch number 2. And I will signify that in the YouTube title as well, because there's a lot of controversy with batch number 1. I'd never had it. I just read reviews and had friends tell me that their opinions on it. But this is batch number 2, bottle number 21,993. It's aged for 4 years. Distilled and bottled by Castle and Key Distillery. Frankfort, Kentucky. Castle and Key restored the historic Old Taylor Distillery, erected in 1887, with a new vision and promise. The awakening of this legendary bourbon icon enables us to create captivating spirits and enduring memories. We craft our spirits with carefully selected grains and a unique barrel regiment to thoughtfully produce distinct spirits to our exacting standards. Lots of SAT words. Come raise a glass with us. All right. Honoring history and challenging tradition. So yeah, I don't know exactly what's their challenging tradition on, but I bought this last week. I think I got the price tag right here, $64, which is pretty fair for MSRP, I believe. I think that's probably a little bit higher than MSRP, but I hadn't seen it before then. Since then, I've seen this in 2 other places, but I guess maybe I just wasn't looking for it. But I figured I'd pick it up. I haven't bought whiskey in a while. It's been probably a month since I bought a bottle, and I wanted to review it on the podcast. So without wasting another minute, let's open it up. Pretty solid cork pop. It's got a very, very heavy cap, synthetic cork. Losing points for that. I obviously that top is just so nice, though. It's so heavy, feels good in my hand. I obviously broke into this a little bit with my brother and my sister's boyfriend. I think the 3 of us had a little bit of it this weekend. So I say we gotta. I enjoy my Saturday night sitting by the fire. That's what I did. So I might have allowed myself to have 2 glasses instead of 1. But with that being said, from what I remember, this is very good. This is a solid pour, and I'm looking forward to diving into it and seeing exactly what it is. Again, it's 4 years old. I do have the mash bill right here. Let me pull it up real quick. It is 73% white corn, 10% rye, and 17% malted barley. So kind of different, You really don't see too many bourbons where the barley content is higher than the rye. That's definitely out of the ordinary, so I am looking forward to seeing exactly what I get on the nose here when I actually try to smell stuff. I remember the first thing I thought on the nose here was, what a delicious nose. Ripe fruit off the bat with some peppery cinnamon spice. Ah, man, it smells really good. And I almost had low expectations going into this because of what was said about batch 1. I let those opinions get to me when I was tasting this, and maybe that's why I liked it so much at the time, but that nose just reminded me why this left such a good first impression on me. This just smells like bourbon. I mean, it's got a bit more of a pepperiness to it, almost like a cinnamon pepper type of deal on it. A strong, ripe fruit sensation. I'm not sure what kind of fruit it is. You got a lot of wood and oak on there, like fresh wood. Healthy amount of vanilla, as always. But it does have a darker aspect on it as well, almost like a dark fruit. I know I said ripe fruit, but now that I kind of like dive into it, I'm getting like raspberry or maybe something darker. It kind of smells like a Fig Newton. You ever had a Fig Newton? You know those cookies? You know what a Fig Newton is. You're not. You guys that are listening aren't stupid. If you're listening to my podcast, you're not stupid for sure, because I'm not stupid. I can't say that with a straight face. If you're listening to this, then you know what a Fig Newton is. I guarantee that. Kind of has that smell to it, almost like, oh, what was that? Yeah, it's got a bit more fruit than I remember on it. Like, I want to say, like, I get, like, raspberry jam with, like, cinnamon and some, like, rye spice on it. I enjoy it. And lots of fresh wood, almost like wood shavings. Oh, you get your sniffer far enough in there, you're gonna get a nice punch of alcohol up your nostrils. Very pleasant nose. It's got a lot of standard bourbon notes on it. Like I said, it's got that nice vanilla. It's got some fresh wood. I'm getting a combination of like, there's like a ripe, like almost apple on there, but there's also a darker aspect, like a raspberry or a blackberry jam, because it is still sweet, which is, I think, where I get Fig Newtons. But then it's got that cinnamon on it, and it has a little bit of like a rye spice or a pepper spice. I don't know what spice it is, but it's definitely got a spicier backdrop to it than most bourbons I've had, you know, in the most bourbons that I've had recently. I really enjoy the nose. It's almost got, and if you dive really deep into it, you get that kind of maltiness. You do really get some malted barley on there. It reminds me a lot of like a Highland Scotch. I always get like green apple, like dark green apple on it. For Highland Scotches like Macallan. And if you reach far enough in there, or maybe I'm just imagining it, you definitely get a tiny bit of that aspect as well. By the way, shout out to Timbercraft Whiskey. I'm wearing their shirt. They sent me over a shirt. I have a sample of their whiskey. I'm definitely going to review it on the podcast soon. I just haven't gotten it to it yet. I got a lot of whiskey I got to review. So shout out to Timbercraft out of Texas for this sick shirt. I don't even know if you can see it if you're watching on YouTube, but it's a sick shirt. I like it. Let's drink. I haven't drank whiskey today. So cheers, you guys, to another week of Who Gives a Dram, 83 episodes in. Castle and Key small batch number 2. Let's get it. I haven't had a lot to eat today either, so that might affect this a little bit. Definitely more peppery than I remember on the palate. A bit of heat coming in there immediately. Pepper, spice, wood, cinnamon. Darker fruit. That raspberry kind of translates over a bit. Nice long Kentucky Hug finish, though. I mean, I would expect that on a brand like Castle and Key. Because you don't get that spiciness translated as much in the nose, but that first sip kind of blew me back a little bit. Giving it a swishy poo. There's definitely that wood aspect on there. Um, which makes sense that it's more like a fresh wood because it is a relatively younger bourbon. The alcohol definitely stands out a bit. I don't know if that's age or mash bill or what, but I would expect it to almost have like a sweeter aspect to it, but it's not that sweet. It's got a sweet undertone, but the first thing I get is a spice of some kind that I really can't put my foot on. I think it's baking spice with like cinnamon and like allspice almost, and it's hard to describe allspice. I smelled allspice the other day. Someone had it in their cabinet, and I smelled it, and because people say it smells like allspice all the time, and remember thinking, oh, I do get that on whiskey sometimes. I kind of get it on this on the palate. But there's also like that cinnamon, a lot of spice to start. That's the main thing I'm getting. On the mid palate is definitely where the sweetness overtakes the spiciness. Vanilla, kind of like a cherry. I'm getting nothing too dark, but the spice continues to overlap with that vanilla sweetness in there, almost like cherry vanilla. And then the spiciness comes back at the end. And it does have a fairly good Kentucky hug for a 99 proof 4-year-old bourbon. Again, it does taste a little alcohol-y. I think that's just because of the age. But this is not bad at all. And you know what? We have to throw points towards the bottle as well, because the bottle is sick. We just recorded Bourbon with Friends last night, where we had Matt, Colorado Spirits Collective, CEO Spirits Collective on Instagram. He joined us on the podcast, and I asked the riveting question, what bottle turns you on the most? I thought it was a solid question. I thought my journalistic capabilities came out when asking that question. I felt like I worked for 60 minutes, but I asked what bottle turns you on the most, and this was my answer because I just thought about how heavy the cap is and the bottle itself is. I mean, I can't imagine how much they spend just to have this bottle on. I mean, this is a lot of glass. It's very heavy. It's got a heavy base, heavy cap, heavy synthetic cork, so they're saving money there probably, but it has to come into account when we do the score here. But I'm trying to think of what I'm going to score it. It's lasting impressions is that this is a very good starter from a very famous and historically significant distillery. I don't know if this is something like, I don't think this lives up to what I thought it was when I drank it on Saturday. However, I am fairly impressed with it. It's a bit too spicy for me, but that's just me nitpicking. I would gladly reach for this any day of the week. I wouldn't like always reach for it, but enough where I'll probably finish this bottle within 6 months. There are plenty of bottles behind me that have been there for over a year that I don't drink, but I just have. But overall, I mean, it's beautiful presentation. It's fairly affordable at, let's say, $60 MSRP. It might be a little bit less than that. I bought it for $65. Fairly affordable. There are some massive hitters in that price range that I would definitely take over this. There are plenty of bourbons I would take over this that are much cheaper. But at the end of the day, it's very cool. Would make a great infinity bottle, and it's just Castle and Key. I mean, they are steamrolling into the whiskey sphere, and I can't imagine they're gonna go anywhere but up moving forward. So that being said, I think that this is gonna be a very generous 8.4. Stamp that in. Who gives a dram scale? 8.4. I definitely buy it if I were you. I wouldn't spend too much over MSRP on it. Definitely don't pay hundreds of dollars for this just because it's the first few batches. Again, this is batch number 2, so I can't speak for batch number 1 or batch number 3 of this year so far. But I like it. It's a bit spicy. It's got a lot of rye and baking spice aspects to it on both the nose and the palate. But the the more underwhelming, or the less significant smells are what kind of complements it, harmonizes with the spice, I think, better than anticipated. With that cherryness, that raspberry on the nose, like a raspberry jam almost, kind of like a Fig Newton vibe all throughout it. It's almost like a darker fruit like that. I think that it's solid, and I'm happy I bought it, and I'm definitely going to finish it, and definitely, as I already have, share it with friends and family. There's just so many hitters at that price point that it has to be something really special in order to at least get my attention. And this got my attention, but not enough where I'm going to go buy a backup of this. I'm good with my one bottle. 8.4. Stamp it in. Well, I'm going to go finish this glass. I'm going to go make some dinner. So, you guys, thank you for tuning into the show. Episode 83 of Who Gives a Dram. Can't believe we're here. Watching on YouTube, thank you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel below. Like, comment, hit the bell notification. I'm doing whiskey reviews every single week, uploading the videos here on YouTube. So I hope you all enjoy that. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure you're subscribed on any platform that you're listening to. Also, leave a rating and review on iTunes for me on Apple Podcasts. It'll really help a lot. And make sure you check me out on all social medias: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok is at Who Gives a Dram. Check out my other podcast, Bourbon with Friends. We're available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube, and also Bourbon with Friends on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok as well. If you want to buy some Who Gives a Dram merch, check out the link in my Instagram bio. I have some merch available there, and I truly, truly appreciate everyone who checks out my content. So we're about halfway through the year now, and the second half of 2022 is going to be a slobber knocker. So I will drink to that. Cheers, you guys! Thanks again for tuning in, and always remember, whiskey's the water of life. So let's start living.